Alright, what's going on, guys? So over the last couple weeks we looked at a lot of different soft plastic lures, but I think what often gets overlooked a lot is the jig head. So the jig head I used in those videos is kind of the panfish jig head I've been using for several years now. It's the brand is Tamora, which I think is like a little knockoff brand, but they are very good jig heads, very good quality hooks, and they are very affordable. Some jig heads though, if you want the better quality ones, they do get a little expensive, especially if you start getting some from Japan. There is another YouTuber called iFish, and he came out with his own jig heads somewhat recently, and I was able to pick a pack up. So real quick, let me talk about iFish, the person, the channel. He specializes mainly in ultralight pan fishing. He used to do a lot of catfish and carp fishing. Now he's mostly crappie and bluegill type of fishing, and he does an excellent job in reviewing a lot of different ultralight products, whether it's rods, reels, lures, jig heads. He has a very large collection, and all of his reviews are very logical and scientific. It's his opinion, but it's his opinion based on logic, and I trust the guy's opinion a lot. And he also fishes a lot of Japanese stuff, a lot of JDM gear, and recently he came out with his own hooks. So they are Japanese hooks. Hopefully you can see it here a little bit. They are a very thin metal, so the thinner profile on these hooks should be able to dig into the fish's mouth a little bit better than the thicker profile on a lot of the, I guess you can say, American branded hooks, and it should increase your hookup ratio. And the jig head, it's a very nice jig head. Can't really say too much more about it, because I mean, a jig head's a jig head, but the hook looks very nice, very thin, very sharp, and the jig head looks very nice, a nice black matte finish. This is the 1 gram version, which I believe is very close to 1/32 of an ounce. I think that's a close comparison. But we'll fish these. These are the size 12 hook variety, and we'll throw a little soft plastic on there, not sure which one yet. We'll fish it for a little bit on this lake and try to get into some panfish, and we'll see how these jig heads produce. Alright, before we actually get to fishing, I tied on the iFish brand jig head here. I wanted to show you the jig head I normally use. It's also about the same size jig head, but look how much smaller the hook is. And I don't mean the size of the hook, I mean the size or the thickness of the actual metal. So this is perfect in my opinion for pan fishing. Does great with bluegills, mine, cichlids, largemouth bass. And look how thin this is. So I'm wondering how strong this is, but it's definitely very sharp, and being smaller, it should be able to penetrate the skin of some of these fish a little bit better, so hopefully it increases the hookup ratio. But this is already a great jig head, and this just looks so much better and more, I guess, professional. So yeah, let's get a little soft plastic on this, and then let's cast it out. Got him. First fish, I think it's a little guy, little largemouth. Alright, first fish of the day. Hook went straight through the top of the mouth, came out real easy. Definitely a little guy, but it's a little panfish size largemouth bass. Basically kind of what we're going for. Some bluegills of this size would be great, but if not, just a couple fish like that to get some action in would be just as good. So first fish down, let's keep going. Another largemouth that I lost. Definitely had him hooked, but I mean, who knows? That could be the jig's fault, could be my fault, could be no one's fault. I also noticed I haven't really shown you guys the soft plastics I've been using. So on that first fish, maybe the first 10 minutes, I was throwing around a 1 1/4 inch trap magnet in pink color, bubblegum color. And the size 12 hook, I think, was just slightly, ever so slightly too big. So I put on a 1-inch Euro Tackle EPF swim, and I think the hook size here is much more appropriate. So I think for this size 12 hook and 1 gram jig head, I think a 1-inch lure, maybe a 1 1/4 inch lure would be fine. But anything larger than that, I think you're gonna have problems with. So far we got one little largemouth on the bank, lost a second. Let's see what else we can make happen here. That was a bite. But unfortunately, it doesn't matter what kind of hook you got if the fish bites behind the hook. So, I mean, it's a small hook. The hook point is very well exposed, but as the fish doesn't get its mouth around it, doesn't matter how sharp the hook is. Let's see if we can get that fish to bite again. There we go. Oh, that was a nice hit. That's a nice fish. What is this going to be? It's wrapped up in all this algae. This is why I don't like fishing this lake. Let's get him on in here. What is this thing? All right, next fish is another little largemouth hooked right in the corner of the mouth. This guy pulled real well for a second. That was going to be a larger size mine cichlid. Nevertheless though, second fish on the bank. The jig head performed nicely. Let's see if we can get another 1 or 2 fish here. There's a bite. Little guy. But we got him. All right, so our first non-bass of the day. This is a Mayan cichlid, a little juvenile Mayan. This lake usually has a lot of these guys. Where did this guy get hooked? In the bottom of the mouth. That's interesting. But yeah, not much else I can say about this little Mayan. Oh, he's in the grass. All right. Let me stop talking. Let me try to get this guy out of the grass and back in the water. Okay, so that was definitely going to be a gator. There's no way a fish was that big. I was just kind of walking over here. Whatever that was, I spooked it. 99% sure it's going to be a gator. Let's see if we can see a gator surface somewhere nearby. I mean, if that was a fish, that was going to be like a 20-pounder. Let's see. Okay, there it is. I was totally right. He swam off quick. Not sure if you could see his head out there in the distance, but we definitely got a gator there. I didn't see him, but he definitely saw me and he took off. All right, let's keep fishing and let's be careful here. All right, through no fault of the jig head, the action today has been quite slow. I can usually get more bites than I've gotten today out of this lake. But let's go ahead, let's wrap it up, and let's talk about the jig head. All right, guys, so that's going to do it. And just checking the time right now, I've been fishing for 54 minutes. So in 54 minutes, we got 2 or 3 largemouths and 1 mine cichlid. So not that great, but could be worse. But let's take a better look, and let's talk about the iFish BG-1 jig head. So objectively speaking, is this one of the better jig heads that I've ever used, or at least better than most of the jig heads you can find on the American market? And I think the answer to that just has to be yes. I don't really even know what argument you could have that the jig heads you get at, let's say, Walmart, or some of these, I don't want to say craftier, but some of these I guess better known panfish brands that come out with their own jig heads, these are still going to be better. So it's tough to see, but number one, the actual like head of the jig, the weight part, very, very nice, very, very uniformly designed. The color on it's a nice black matte finish, which looks really nice. There is no sort of paint residue on the jig, the eye of the jig head where your line goes. It is very, very cleanly made, very neatly made. The hook is really, really nice, very thin, which should create more hookups, because it's easier to penetrate the fish's jig head compared to the thicker hooks that come on most jig heads we can get here in the US. And it is just, it's very, I would say, professionally made, very neat, very nice, very clean. And is it worth it? Do you need this? And unfortunately to that, I think the answer is no. It's tough to put an objective number on it, but if I was gonna catch, let's say 19 fish on like the regular jig heads that I use, maybe using this jig head I'll catch 20. Maybe it's, instead of 9, I'll catch 10. So these might give you like an extra 5 or 10% catches, but is that worth it to spend more money? I don't think so. And these aren't super expensive. I think they were like $2.50 or $3 or something like that for a 5-pack. So it's nothing that's gonna make me go broke and homeless. But I don't think these are necessarily necessary. If you want to fish some really nice jig heads, you want to spend a little bit extra money to catch that one extra fish, I think these are great. They're probably the best thing that you can get in the US without having to ship something in from Japan. But would I buy more of these? Probably not. I got a couple packs which I'll go through, but after that I'll probably just use the Tamora jig heads I've been using for years now, because I have no complaints with those. But that being said, I do recommend these. I do also recommend iFish, the YouTube channel, if you want to check him out. Link to these jig heads and link to his channel will be in the description. He comes out with some great pan fishing and ultralight content. So yeah, that's going to wrap it up for the iFish BG-1 jig head review. So hope you guys liked it, and I will see you guys next time.